how do you mold the two though, and find and where you're able to be, empathetic or sympathetic? We combine those words today because, like, I think the challenge can be as a leader, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have any problem, having people oppose my perspective, but today you find yourself as a leader and you're like, I've already learned that. Like, if you're dealing with people and their challenges and you have the answer and you know what to do, and you just wish that you had that shot to give them. And how in that moment, though, can you be sympathetic if you haven't ever experienced it or gone through it, but then truly have empathy for what they're going through while they're going through it? How do you bring those two together?
I think for me, it's really questioning myself and asking myself, do I really know? And really challenging that. I think I know, but listening and being open to other perspectives. I know I still might end up in the same place where I'm like, yeah, I knew, but really challenging that myself and sitting with that, I think has been, for me, really critical. And we have something we talk about at Ubiquitous called the knower trap, which is you can get stuck in the knower trap where you're not listening because you know. And just being able to identify that and challenge yourself, I think is one of the keys to being a successful leader and to being able to get the best out of people and get their best ideas. Because if you know, they're not going to tell you their best ideas.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a leadership trap, right? That we can fall into, because whatever's gotten us here, whatever drove us to the point that we're at, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of willpower, a lot of determination, a lot of overcoming. People tell you can't do something, you do it anyway, and you're all in and you figure things out and you problem solve. And so there's probably something there where we feel like we can go find the answer, where you don't have to wait and rely on others. Well, there's a lot of other opinions that are probably better than ours at times. What's your thought about, I think it's fascinating, and I said that in the beginning, you come from the VC and finance world. As segments are looked at in 3 to 5 to 7 years, from my understanding in that world, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right.
How do you combine that with everything that I've learned in my personal life and in business? It's like, man, you got to be all in and you got to be all in long term. How do you connect those and figure out like which one of them can we evaluate and determine how successful we are? How do we do that?
I mean, it's really hard. I mean, the first bit, you said it, is there a mismatch between my time frame as an entrepreneur and our team's time frame as we build the business and the time frame of our investors? I mean, that's a great starting place. Some of that's in investor selection. Some of it's in communication across the two parties. And I think a lot of it is in the second part of what you said, which is setting milestones that are maybe our interim milestones to us as we look at that long-term play, but that are signals of success and, kind of building into this, I think of it as a step function of different phases of businesses. Mm-hmm. Especially for a company like ours, if you think in a 3 or 5 year time frame, it's incredibly difficult to go from technology to, broad adoption of a hard goods product, especially one that's built into buildings, in any time frame that's 3, 5, or 7 years. And so, some of it is charting that path that has different milestones and steps along the way that we can clearly articulate to investors so that we can say, this is what we're going to do with your money. It's going to build value at the company and it will unlock the next phase. And so, a lot of our strategic planning and kind of, I've been trained to think that way into those, those step phases of, what's success in this phase and what does that mean the next phase looks like? So it does become like very much a stair step all along the way to that long-term goal.
What have you learned about what we should do with goals for us? Let's say that I personally have a 3-year goal and I see it 6 months, I see it 12 months, I see it 18 months, and I'm looking at the metrics and I'm like, hey, are we on track? Do I think we're on track to achieve it? When I get to 24 months or 30 months and I'm like, wow, we're really not going to hit that 36-month target. What should an entrepreneur, no matter if you're early stage or, a CEO who's come in, what do you do? What do we do with that goal? What do we do with goal? Is that okay? Do we reset another goal? Do we reflect and look back and figure out what needs to improve going forward? Like, how do we do that for ourselves? Not for investors, not for anybody else, to make sure that we're actually involved in something that's productive, that we're living up to the expectations of our stakeholders, the people that are relying on us. Because they don't know. They're on board. They got on board the ship with us, right? They're just having faith. Like, man, they've got it pointed in the right direction. The outcome is going to be proper for us. What do we do when we realize, man, we're not going to hit this?
Well, and sometimes I heard you say it too, we have to evaluate that goal for ourselves too, right? Like we all have personal goals. I mean, I think the thing that I'm constantly doing, and I'm guessing you are too, is I'm constantly evaluating that goal, because the world changes so quickly and so much new information is coming in that 3 years is a long time to have one goal. I mean, I'm sure you have an array of goals, but to not reevaluate and potentially reset that goal. You're talking about a scenario where you might not make it. I mean, there are probably just as many scenarios where you've overshot that goal already at 24 months and it was the wrong goal. So I think of goals as, things that are certainly, set and we're trying to achieve them, but I think they need to be constantly reevaluated, and we're always getting new information. And so that's something I do for myself personally, kind of constant check-ins on, I said I wanted to be here. Do I still want to be there? And is it still achievable? Is it even what I want? And that's really important, that constant reevaluation. And we do that at Ubiquitous with our goals too. I mean, the world has changed so much in the last 18 months, man. Right? Like, the economy is completely different. So we'd be crazy to have exactly the same goals. I challenge you to find someone who hasn't reevaluated their goals in that environment.
Yeah. Do you have it figured out now? Like, can you be that honest on a podcast? Like, I find myself weekly, I'm like, what metric am I supposed to be looking at in the world right now to even evaluate what's proper here? It's wild.
It's wild.
I know. And so it does. And it doesn't matter if we listen to the experts who we would look at as government entities. It's wild. And what I've found is, man, our projections and the so-called experts, we're just wrong all the time. And a lot of times there's economists that I listen to, and I would always plug into them every year. And I'm like, man, they're spot on. These people are always spot on. They always can see. They're looking back at trends. They're looking at decade trends. And I even listened to somebody like Ray Dalio, right? Ran one of the most successful, if not the largest hedge funds in the world. Wrote the book Principles, which is an awesome book. He talks about idea meritocracy. He's so right about so many things. But then I'm like, if I listen to this guy, he says we're in like quarter 3.5 of 4 quarters of like the end of our country. I mean, I'm not kidding. I listened to a podcast the other day, like Tom Bilyeu has Impact Theory. It's a great podcast. And he was interviewing Dalio. And at the end of it, I'm like, man, I'm depressed. This is one of the most intelligent financial minds that I believe, success and failure. And I'm like, he thinks it's over. I'm like, what are we doing here? And then, but I'm an optimistic entrepreneur. I'm an optimistic human being. And so then what do I do with that? What moves? Where do I go to find the information to know what moves to make as a leader, as an entrepreneur? What do you do with financing? What are growth goals, right? What can you lay out as expectations about leadership? It's wild. It's a tough world, and I don't care. People can shoot me down for it, but it's really tough for my seat. Maybe I need to grow my intelligence. I don't know. It's tough.
No, I agree with you. And what does that even mean, right? Yeah, maybe he's right that, it's over, but what does that mean? I mean, it means the beginning of something else.
And I'm trying to figure out what it is.
Yep. We're all trying to figure out what it is. So I guess I'm like you. I'm such an optimist. Mm-hmm. And I think, I'm so focused on climate. So, right. So I see everything through this climate lens. Yes, there's chaos in the markets. And everything that you said, I agree with. Mm-hmm. And there's this just collective movement, at least within climate tech, where I see companies and entrepreneurs working together. We have shared goals. We kind of do feel like we're all, in battle together. And so that gives me some confidence that, it's people like you and me who get to decide what you know, if this, what we're in right now, is ending, we get to be a part of what's beginning, and we get to shape that. And I don't know what that means yet, because I don't think I've quite seen that inflection point, but that's where my optimistic brain goes is, you know, humans, we are so adaptable. And when we work together, we can accomplish really amazing things. And so the end of one phase is going to be the beginning of another one. And I want to be a part of shaping that.